Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're looking at some research that might literally change how you think about sleep forever. We usually treat it as this passive state of rest, right? Like a time when the brain just powers down like a laptop. But the science tells a radically different story. Sleep is definitely not an absence of wakefulness. It's an incredibly active, dynamic state. It is, no joke, the master regulator of your autonomic nervous system, your emotional resilience, and your overall metabolic health. To really grasp what a crazy physiological mystery sleep truly is, just consider this evolutionary perspective from neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Walker. Here's a quote from him. "From this moment forth, he will repeatedly and routinely lapse into a state of apparent coma, filled with stunning, bizarre hallucinations." I mean, imagine a doctor telling you that about your newborn. They're going to routinely lapse into a coma-like state, be totally paralyzed, hallucinate wildly, and be completely vulnerable to predators. From a pure survival standpoint, that sounds like an evolutionary death sentence, doesn't it?
So, we really have to ask, why on earth do we do this for a third of our lives? I mean, if sleep doesn't serve an absolutely critical, non-negotiable set of biological functions, it's got to be the biggest mistake evolution ever made. So let's dive into this. We're going to uncover the hidden molecular mechanisms that make this incredibly vulnerable state the absolute foundation of our survival and our sanity.
Section 1. The corticolimbic hinge, the brain's emotional brake.
Okay, to understand this, we need to look at the neuroanatomy of emotional regulation. Because your feelings aren't just abstract concepts, right? They're actually dictated by the physical structure and connectivity of your brain. So let's look at what neuroscientists call the corticolimbic hinge. It's the regulatory neural pathway linking the medial prefrontal cortex to the subcortical amygdala. Think of this whole system like a car's gas pedal and brake. The amygdala, which is tucked deep down in the emotional center of your brain, is your threat detection system. That's the gas pedal. It reacts to stress with lightning speed. Then you have the medial prefrontal cortex, or MPFC, located right behind your forehead. That's your logical, rational brake. When this neural hinge is healthy, your prefrontal cortex sends inhibitory signals right down to the amygdala, keeping your emotional responses perfectly calibrated to the actual threat level.
But what happens when we actually restrict sleep? Well, just a single night of sleep deprivation literally severs this crucial neural hinge. Without sleep, your prefrontal cortex basically just goes offline, and the amygdala's reactivity spikes by a catastrophic 60%. You essentially lose the emotional brake pedal entirely.
The contrast here is super fascinating. In a sleep-rested brain, we see strong MPFC coupling. This means you're in a parasympathetic, rested and emotionally stable state with low tonic noradrenaline. But when you're sleep-deprived, the prefrontal cortex is totally decoupled. And worse, the amygdala finds a new partner, the locus coeruleus, which is the brain's main adrenaline center. So your brain gets locked into this state of sympathetic hyperarousal, flooding your system with high cortisol and literally turning minor daily inconveniences into massive physiological threats.
Now this brings us to a really vital question. If sleep regulates our emotional brake, what exactly is happening to the physical brain during those 8 hours?
Which brings us to Section 2, the dual action repair system, REM and deep NREM.
It turns out, sleep is definitely not just one monolithic state. It's actually a dual-action repair system driven by two main stages that restore both mental and physical homeostasis. First, let's talk about REM sleep. This is where we dream, and it effectively acts as an overnight emotional therapy session in a neurochemical safe space. Because during REM, something truly miraculous happens neurochemically. Your brain completely shuts off the release of noradrenaline, a major stress chemical. So you have zero-stress noradrenaline. This creates a safe space where your brain can reactivate and reprocess the difficult emotional memories from your day. Since that stress chemical is totally absent, REM safely strips away the visceral, autonomic charge from those memories, reducing your emotional reactivity the next day by up to 30%. That's a huge deal.
But while REM handles the software, deep, non-REM, slow-wave sleep handles the hardware. Enter the glymphatic system. This is the brain's waste clearance pathway, active primarily during deep sleep. It's essentially your brain's overnight sanitation crew. During the day, as your brain cells consume energy, they build up toxic metabolic waste. And the most notable one is a protein called beta amyloid, which is heavily linked to Alzheimer's disease. Well, the glymphatic system flushes these metabolic toxins out. But here's the catch. It's almost exclusively active during deep sleep.
And the sheer physical mechanics of this are just mind-blowing. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the physical spaces between your brain cells actually expand by up to 60%. This massive expansion allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and wash away those toxic plaques. So if you don't get deep sleep, that cleaning crew simply can't get in, and the neurotoxins compound night after night, driving chronic neural inflammation.
Section 3. Systems Thinking. The bidirectional loop of stress and sleep.
All right, we need to zoom out to the macro level to see how stress dictates sleep architecture. Your endocrinology, meaning your hormones, dictates your sleep architecture, and in turn, your sleep dictates your hormones. Let's track a stressful thought as it turns into a physical chemical reality. It's a 5-step process. Step 1, it starts in the PVN of the hypothalamus. Step 2, the hypothalamus releases CRH. Step 3, this triggers the anterior pituitary gland. Step 4, the pituitary releases ACTH, which finally, step 5, tells your adrenal glands to pump out adrenal cortisol. This whole cascade is the HPA axis. Now, research shows that during non-REM sleep, stress molecules like CRH can oscillate on a millisecond level, directly modulating sleep spindles and causing microarousals. Basically, your daytime stress literally reaches into your sleeping brain to pull it out of deep rest.
The absolute crucial hinge point in this stress-sleep battle is an excitatory neuropeptide called orexin. Orexin is localized in the hypothalamus, and its primary job? To stabilize wakefulness. But when you're under chronic stress, orexin goes into complete overdrive. It continuously stimulates cortisol release, and it drives a massive state of sympathetic hyperarousal that brutally fragments your sleep. It literally blocks you from entering those restorative REM and deep NREM stages we just talked about.
And this creates a really vicious bidirectional loop. In a healthy sleep cycle, deep, slow-wave sleep naturally suppresses cortisol, and you get high growth hormone release. But in the vicious cycle, insomnia activates the HPA axis, and elevated evening cortisol fragments your sleep. And that resulting sleep debt fundamentally alters your brain's stress response the very next day. It makes you even more reactive, which in turn elevates your cortisol again the next night. You basically become biologically trapped in a state of hyperarousal.
Section 4. Clinical Reality and Restoration. Breaking the Loop.
So, what does all this actually mean for our daily lives? Well, when we look at the clinical realities of burnout, anxiety, and depression, the data is just staggering. Sleep disruption isn't just a symptom of psychiatric conditions, it's a transdiagnostic driver of them. Let's look at the relative risk indicators. For major depressive disorder, chronic insomnia brings a 10-fold risk increase. For anxiety disorders, it's a 17-fold risk increase driven by that amygdala hyperreactivity. And in bipolar affective disorder, acute sleep loss can directly precipitate manic switches. When the brain's emotional brake is severed and the HPA axis is locked on, it manifests as severe, compounding psychiatric vulnerability.
So the big question is, how do we fix it? Well, we have to intervene to chemically downregulate orexin and realign the circadian clock. And we can do this using a few key evidence-based behavioral interventions. First up, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI. This is the gold standard for restructuring sleep architecture. But basic biology plays a huge role here too. Things like morning light exposure, getting bright light in your eyes first thing in the morning completely anchors your circadian clock. Then there's maintaining consistent sleep-wake schedules, adding in daily movement and exercise to burn off excess stress chemicals, and utilizing balanced nutrient timing. All of these work synergistically to tell your nervous system that it is finally safe to power down.
But we also have to stop self-inflicting biological chaos. Consider something called social jet lag. This is the misalignment between your biological clock and socially imposed schedules, and it acts as a chronic stressor. This happens when you, say, sleep from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. during the week, but then stay up until 2 a.m. and sleep until 10 a.m. on the weekends. Treating your circadian rhythm like a yo-yo acts as a massive chronic physiological stressor. Your body literally never knows what time zone it's in, keeping that sympathetic nervous system locked right into a low-grade fight-or-flight state. Consistency is, without a doubt, the ultimate biological anxiolytic.
So the crucial point I want to leave you with is this. Sleep is not an obstacle to your productivity. It is the fundamental biological mechanism that makes your cognitive and emotional reality possible. It's the architect of your resilience, it's the cleaner of your neurotoxins, and the master regulator of your stress. Knowing all of this, knowing the intricate molecular dance happening inside your skull every single night, if sleep is the master regulator of your reality, how will you protect your brain tonight? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.